researchers have a new theory on why atheists are distrusted and even hated. And it may have to do with people's own fears of death. Interesting. Now, researchers have found evidence that atheists are disliked and distrusted because of the widespread belief that people behave better when they think an almighty divine power is watching their every move. Now, we hear that's a lot, right? Well, how are you going to be a moral person? What's going to cause you to be moral if there's no punishment? Why don't you just go around raping and killing everything? If there's no God to judge you, then why would you be a good person? Now, that's a ridiculous argument, but it's one that they often use, and it's one that's often cited by Christians. Now, this new research proposes another hypothesis, and this is this hypothesis is that atheists are disliked because they pose a fundamental threat to the worldview of religious people, a worldview that helps them mitigate the potential terror arising from the uniquely human awareness of death. So because they are afraid of death, well, atheists remind them that, hey, what we believe, lights out, that's it, you're done when you die. Well, they're scared of that. Now, a lot of that comes to our own view of our own self-importance. Well, I'm too important to die. I'm too important to go into oblivion. I don't want to be gone. I want to be around. I completely understand that, and I empathize with that. I would like to be around, but there doesn't seem to be any evidence for that. Now, Corey Alcock, which came up with this theory, has said, quote, atheists have long been an especially stigmatized group, even going back to the olden days. Quote, in fact, the Greek term atheos, godless, without a god, was actually used as a pejorative. So they're like, oh, you atheos, get out of here. What are you doing? It's a pejorative to those who fail to worship culturally accepted gods, and religious and political figures throughout recorded history have vigorously inveighed against those who do not believe in God or gods. Now, their study is called, What If They're Right About the Afterlife? Evidence of the Role of Existential Threat on Anti-Atheist Prejudice. And it was published online April 27th in the scientific journal Social Psychology and Personality Science. Now, this experiment that they did was conducted with 236 different college students, and it revealed that people from a variety of religious backgrounds tended to become more negative, more distant, and more distrustful of atheists after reflecting on their own mortality. Now, it's a small sample size, I will grant you that, but it does kind of give you a window. When you start thinking about death and how you don't want to die, and how, especially when you talk to atheists who don't believe in anything afterwards, I guess it gets you a little bit more distressful. It gets you angry because you're afraid. It makes kind of all the sense in the world to me. A second experiment with another 200 students found that thinking about atheism made religious people more likely to think about death. Oh, because in Christianity, you don't have to worry about it. And a lot of these religions tell you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about death. You're covered, man. You're going to go see your Aunt Sue again. You're going to see Grandma again. Or atheists, we're like, sucks, but you'll never see Grandma again. She's dead. She's gone. And that, of course, upsets people. Once again, I understand. There's plenty of people I would love to see again. But it's not going to happen because they're dead. It's one of those things that is very, very difficult to accept, but you have to. Now, the findings, according to them, support the idea that one of the reasons people dislike and distrust non-believers is because atheism poses a threat to atheistic worldviews that help people cope with human vulnerability and mortality. There are currently 13 million self-identified non-believers in the United States. This is according to Cook and his colleagues. Despite these large numbers, atheists remain stigmatized, and many are understandably reluctant to openly profess their disbelief in God. They continue. Given that groups that threaten the worldview beliefs are often responded to with increased discrimination and aggression, future research would predictably directed toward identifying benign ways to parry the existential threat that atheists pose to believers, thus mitigating the hostility and intolerance that they are often subjected to. Now, they do point out one thing in this too that I think is important, especially in the atheist community. Atheists, in turn, might be well served to consider how militant denunciation of theistic conceptions of reality and those who adhere to them, as opposed to critical skepticism and civil disagreement, contributes to their current unpopularity in many cultures. Basically saying like, hey, don't be an ass. You can be an atheist without being a dick and still get your point across. I kind of agree with that. I think it's good to not be a dick. For me, as long as I respect a religion, as long as that religion doesn't try to dictate my life. I'm fine with you believing whatever you want to believe, as long as you don't use that to persecute others. And that's the whole problem that I have with religion. I don't believe in it. I think it's a little kooky, but you know what? You are allowed to believe whatever you want without any sort of restriction. As long as you don't hurt other people with it. And I think that's the important thing that we need to get out of this.